I think all the ice has been broken when Isaac shat on Phoebe's face.
Also feel like I'm delayed and everything. I can't fucking talk.
Well, your screen is delayed. Like, your brain might be delayed, but also your screen is delayed.
No, that's what I mean. I think my brain is right on time.
With a delayed screen or pre-delay screen?
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, second pagers. This is Beyond the First Page with siblings Phoebe, Isaac, and Phil. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Isaac.
And today we are talking about There by Tommy Orange. And I just want to say from the start, I am very excited to talk to you guys today. I feel like it's been a hot minute, even though it's just been 2 weeks since we got to talk about books. And I'm very excited to talk to you guys. And what?
Coming at you not live at all, but...
Well, I'm still just excited. It's fun to talk to your brothers.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. It does feel like a while.
And I wanted to tell all of our listeners, if you're new here or just if you haven't listened in a while, we talk about major spoilers and plot points from throughout the book. So if you don't want There by Tommy Orange ruined for you, really recommend that you read the book first, then come on and listen to the podcast and share your thoughts. Please leave us a comment. If you like this podcast, please follow us on Spotify, YouTube, or Instagram. If you really like it, feel free to give us a 5-star rating. And we are just excited to talk books with all of you. So please give us a comment, like I said. And if you're new here also, before we begin talking about books, we usually like to do kind of like a warm-up. I don't want to call it an icebreaker because we're siblings. So that's just like, you don't need an icebreaker to talk to your siblings, but just a little warm-up to share kind of our inner thoughts outside of a book, but usually related.
I think all the ice has been broken when Isaac shat on Phoebe's face.
The last shard
no ice left after that.
Yeah, I think now the ice has been broken with our listeners as well. Oh my God. Well, anyways, today's icebreaker, quote unquote, is what our favorite book to movie adaptation is or book to TV show. And I'm not going to go first because honestly, I think I want to say something a little controversial. So maybe I'll let Isaac go first and see what he has to say.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Phil. It's not a movie, but TV show is the first season of Game of Thrones. I thought it followed the book like to a T. Great visual, aesthetic to the entire first book. It's a shame it couldn't keep going that way, but yeah, first season was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for me, I think it's better if the book is actually bad or like not that good and the movie's really good. And to bring it back, I'm going to go with Lord of the Rings. The movies are awesome. I love the Lord of the Rings movies.
Wait, no, Phil, go again.
And
go again. Like everybody knows your stance on Lord of the Rings at this point.
I can go, I'll go to sort of under the cover ones. Shawshank Redemption and The Godfather are both books that are just not popular because the movies are so good.
Wow. Good ones.
Do you still have the Shawshank poster that I gave you when you went to college?
I don't. I don't think that Marilyn Monroe on my wall would still go, but that was a great
I do not know what you guys are talking about, and I don't think I want to know.
Or it wasn't Marilyn Monroe, it was Audrey Hepburn.
It's the poster he covers up the hole that he escapes with in Shawshank Redemption I gave to Phil when he went to college.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't think you gave me anything when I went to college, Isaac. Actually, maybe like a handle of vodka or something. No, I think I'm gonna go with Dune. I feel like it's an easy out, but I personally just loved the movies, hated the book. Which I know, Isaac, you said the movie for you didn't speak to you, the first one at least. It was just nothing really happened, but I thought that it did a really good job of following it and then veering from it when the books became not it. Like I really do think that the books were just poorly written. The universe is freaking awesome, but I couldn't get through those series because I just couldn't get behind the writing. And then I'm so excited for the movies to come out so I can see the world grow and understand the characters and see how it ends. So that's mine. Probably also unpopular for the Dune crowd, but what can you do?
Yeah.
Mom said we have to be more controversial.
Can't please
So
everyone.
Yeah, at least none of us said Harry Potter. So
yeah, that's something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
True.
Well, now that we have that under our belts, let us talk about There There by Tommy Orange. Oh, really quickly, actually, because we had a question actually come up about this. And I want to just talk really briefly. We used to talk about why we picked the books that we picked, and then we kind of got away from that. But just to kind of bring it back, because I think it's important for our listeners to understand where we're getting these books. A lot of it was just honestly Phil and I saying, oh, hey, we haven't read this book. We heard it's good. We wanted to read it. And this was back when Isaac was we didn't realize the error of our ways, and we hadn't included Isaac, the true talent of the podcast. But a lot of it was things we had heard that we wanted to read. Some of it was just Googling like, hey, best books to read over your lifetime. I think this was one of those books that it either was a finalist for the Pulitzer or won a Pulitzer or won a National Book Award. And also it talks about the Native community, which I think, something that all three of us would probably agree is reading gives you exposure into areas of other people's life that you've never experienced based on, where you live in the country, your privilege, your, whatever your socioeconomic status, whatever the case may be. And so I think this is definitely one of those books, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And so it did prove to be very interesting, in my opinion, and exposed me to things I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. So let's get into talking about it. Isaac, would you just do There in 60 seconds for our listeners?
yes, They're There in 60 seconds. It's a collection of stories about 12 different Native people who are all traveling to the Big Oakland Powwow in California. In each chapter, we learn a little bit about the character's history and explaining why they're going to the powwow. We also learn how the characters, seemingly random, become interconnected as the powwow gets closer, and how Native people have varying levels of connections to their heritage and how that heritage has an impact on their lives.
That's a great summation, Isaac. Thank you. And I think also you wanted to share a quote. I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about being exposed. And again, we've made a few other disclaimers on the podcast. We try to be as open and honest with our listeners as possible, and also, recognize and be self-aware of who we are, where we came from. And so obviously we are not Native. We are not part of a Native community. And so, we're going to try to talk about these things with as much understanding and as grace as we can. And I think, Isaac, this quote that you pointed out is a perfect way to start this, because I think a lot of people should hear this. And it really resonated with me, and it obviously resonated with you. So would you like to share the quote from There?
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the best kind of, when people talk about privilege, again, as like a straight white middle class male, it's like hard to really understand what that's like because you have all the privilege there is, like when they're talking about that. So, there's always like people are trying to do examples to have people understand kind of the different, I guess, like starting points that people have. And if with that, straight white male, you're just starting in such a better spot than a lot of other people out there. And there's the video I'm sure a lot of people have seen about where they do the race and they have people line up at different spots, and then like the most privileged people start like 2 steps from the finish line or whatever. But this one was another great example, and it like cool that it was in the book. Yeah, something that I've got the most out of, I think, in any book that we've read so far. So I'm just going to read it. It's a little long, but all right. So the wound that was made when white people came and took all that they took has never healed. An unattended wound gets infected, becomes a new kind of wound, like the history of what actually happened became a new kind of history. All these stories that we haven't been telling all the time, that we haven't been listening to, are just part of what we need to heal. Not that we're broken, and don't make the mistake of calling us resilient. To not have been destroyed, to not have given up, to have survived is no badge of honor. Would you call an attempted murder victim resilient? When we go to tell our stories, people think we want it to have gone different. People want to say things like sore losers and move on already, quit playing the blame game. But is it a game? Only those who have lost as much as we have see the particularly nasty slice of smile on someone who thinks they're winning when they say, get over it. This is the thing. If you have the option to not think about or even consider history, whether you learned it right or not, or whether it even deserves consideration, that's how you know you're on board the ship that serves hors d'oeuvres and fluffs your pillows, while others are out at sea, swimming or drowning, or clinging to little inflatable rafts that they have to take turns keeping inflated. People short of breath who've never even heard of the words hors d'oeuvres or fluff. Then someone from up on the yacht says, it's too bad those people down there are lazy and not as smart and able as we are up here. We who have built these strong, large, stylish boats ourselves. We who float the seven seas like kings. And then someone else on board says something like, but your father gave you this yacht, and these are his servants who brought you the hors d'oeuvres. At which point the person gets tossed overboard by a group of hired thugs who've been hired by the father who owned the yacht, hired for the express purpose of removing any and all agitators on the yacht to keep them from making unnecessary waves, or even referencing the father or the yacht itself. Meanwhile, the man thrown overboard begs for his life, and the people on the small inflatable rafts can't get to him soon enough, or they don't even try, and the yacht's speed and weight cause an undertow. Then, in whispers, while the agitator gets sucked under the yacht, private agreements are made, precautions are measured out, and everyone quietly agrees to keep on quietly agreeing to the implied rule of law and to not think about what just happened. Soon, the father who put these things in place is only spoken of in the form of lore stories told to children at night under the stars, at which point there are suddenly several fathers, noble, wise forefathers, and the boat sails on unfettered. So yeah, I thought that was like, I read that, or I mean, I listened to this book, but when I listened to that part of it, I had to like pause the book and just, I was driving. I had to like pause it and just sit there and think and just be like, damn,
Yeah.
like I'm on the yacht
Right.
for sure. And I think it is, we, as we talk about this book, I think one of the things that I said, when we were like discussing what do we want to talk about was like, this story theoretically didn't have to be like have native characters, and it could have been a different event and they all could have interconnected, and there could have been a shooting at like a mall and could have all been like the same sort of things. But and it maybe would have been a good story, but I think that I like this book a ton because of just the native voice that it became. It like added an element to a story that, okay, yes, to tell a story like this doesn't necessarily have to be, but this added like a layer that, made me stop the book and just drive for 30 minutes, just being like, okay, I really need to like think about what is happening in this story.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool. Haven't done that with a book in maybe ever. I don't know. But I don't think ever for that kind of thing. I think I've stopped for like self-help book or something. But in that kind of sense, I don't think I've ever, had that pause. So I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the quote, obviously. I think that when we actually agree, Isaac. I think when we were trying to plan for this podcast, you had said that like this is a story of identity, and he tells it through the native lens, and that is unique. But like this story could be through another lens, and I don't. I'm not sure if that's what you're saying, but I personally don't think that, and I think you don't think that either. I think that the native lens is every culture has their own native peoples, and unfortunately, besides I literally cannot think of one off the top of my head. Maybe Bolivia, in some African cultures, like that native culture has just been completely wiped out almost and like replaced. And the only reason I say Bolivia is because it's really cool. If you look at the most popular last name in like all of these South American countries, it's usually something that very Spanish, like Hernandez or Garcia or Gonzalez, something like that. And then Bolivia's is just an indigenous name that is not that at all, which is very cool. But I think especially natives face a unique discrimination. And I think that plays out. I sort of know the economics of it, but they're the poorest minority by far. Like no other comes close. The highest poverty rates in America, all native reservations. It's very sad, and it's just like you see that in this book. You see these fractured identities of kids whose dad is native and mom is white, and they're like, I don't think I'm white, but the dad is not in the picture, and the mom is white, and she's like, you're white. And the kid's like, I feel native, but I don't know how to explore that at all. And it's such a small community that like they did find each other at the powwow, but like it's really hard to connect to people who are going through the same thing. So I think that that's why this book is so well ranked. I don't think that we're ever going to come close to telling a good number of native stories. It's undertold everywhere. And so I think that really made this book unique. So I agree with you, Isaac. It really adds an extra dimension to a story about identity.
I think it's interesting too what you said, Phil, about we're not going to have a good ending. I don't know if that's what you meant when you're talking about a native story. I think I may end up changing my ranking by the end of this conversation because I do think that, yeah, there's no good ending. I do think, though, as far as the native piece, if it wasn't native, like you said, Phil, I don't think, and you also said this, Isaac, it would not have gotten the recognition it got, and also wouldn't have stood out as much to us, because then it's just a very tragic story, which sometimes, as a reader, you're just trying to escape. So yeah, very interesting conversations. That's great. We wanted to orient our readers, so we've kind of gotten into the story a little bit, but we want to orient our readers to the way that the book is set up, which is I think we have almost 12, if not more, narratives happening here. So it's a very Love Actually, for lack of a better comparison, story where you have, as we've described, you have all these different characters. You're getting their inner dialogues, and they're all somehow interconnected. We just wanted to run through the list of characters because we're going to be talking about the intricacies of how they're related throughout, and it will help our listeners be a little bit more oriented to what we're talking about. So Tony Lohman, who was in full regalia on the bus on the way to the powwow, he is a friend of Daniel Gonzalez, and he has fetal alcohol syndrome. He was involved in the robbery on the robber side, we should say, and then he dies at the powwow. Dean Oxendine, he was doing the documentary about the native culture in Oakland, and he survives and continues his project. Opal Viola Victoria Bearshield, she is the pseudo-grandmother to Orville, Luther, and Lonnie, and they are actually biologically her sister's grandchildren, but she takes care of them because her sister was an alcoholic. And that's Jackie Redfeather. Jackie Redfeather is also the mother to Blue, who Blue is on the powwow council and kind of has put this whole thing together. And Blue is the child that when Harvey rapes Jackie, that's the child that she has, and she puts her up for adoption. And Blue is raised by white parents. Edwin Black is Harvey's other child, who is he struggles with obesity, and he joins the powwow committee, and he is half brother and sister with Blue. Orville Redfeather is the grandson, like I said, of Opal Viola Victoria Bearshield, and he gets into dancing and wearing Native American regalia, and he gets shot at the powwow. He goes to dance at the powwow and gets shot, and he's at the end rushed to the hospital. And then Octavio Gomez is kind of the mastermind behind the shooting at the powwow, and he is killed at the end of that. And then there's Bill Davis, Edwin's stepfather, and he was a veteran and also was a maintenance guy at the Coliseum where the powwow was held, and he ends up getting shot and killed. Calvin Johnson was brothers with Charles, who was also part of the plot to rob the powwow, and he dies at the powwow. Thomas Frank is a Cheyenne man who gets into drumming. He was fired from the Indian Center because he was an alcoholic, and he ends up dying. And Daniel Gonzalez was a friend of Tony Loneman, who had the fetal alcohol syndrome. He was involved in the robbery, and he was cousins with Octavio, and he ends up printing the guns that they robbed the powwow with. And then I think the only other characters were Charles and Carlos, who go by Charlos, and they bring Calvin to Octavio, and that's kind of how this whole plot gets hatched, because Calvin is on the powwow committee, and he lets it slip that there's a lot of money at the powwow, and then Charlos, which is Charles and Carlos, let Octavio know, and then that's how it kind of all gets started. And as you can see, that's a very long and complicated list of characters, and they're sometimes tangentially connected to the story and the people.
Sorry, did you guys listen to the book as well?
Yeah, listened.
Yeah.
So maybe that's another.
It could have been better, a reading.
So actually, I checked the book out on like an ebook to be able to read the passage before. And something I noticed that I forgot to bring up in the beginning of this is that in the beginning of the book, if you read it, it essentially does what you just did, Phoebe. Gives you a complete cast of characters and a little bit of breakdown of their like relationship and background, like 1 or 2 sentences each.
Maybe if you want to listen, read that first anyways. So check out the ebook and then go ahead and listen, because you'll be much more oriented if you're avid listeners like us. Because another thing personally that I felt was there was a lot of characters, and maybe the story would have benefited and been more poignant if there was fewer characters. And you guys can definitely chime in if you think that's true, false, indifferent to that thought.
I didn't mind the number of characters. I think like this is one of my favorite things about Casual Vacancy too, how like all the different characters ended up being intertwined without them necessarily having to meet, or it's like the Love Actually thing too. They pass each other and are all connected kind of at the end. I just really like that in stories. I think that's cool.
Yeah. I just wish they spent more time on each character, like to get to know, because that's why we had to do a story map, right? Because it's like, who was that again? And why was he? It was like a blip,
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that.
It's going to look like we're filming on 2 separate days, because I just think that all the positive things I just had to say, like this story and concept was amazing. The execution I thought was horrible.
You're really against
I think it was
too many characters.
It was not. I didn't feel anything for any of the characters. I didn't feel anything when it ended. It was I'm reading Russian literature right now, and it's philosophical, and I'm feeling more towards these characters, and it's like a poor translation. I didn't get anything out of the characters. I thought it was too much. I think that the conclusion that that Isaac quote, that was amazing, but I don't think that was too far and too few and far between, I guess. for me to get much out of this book.
Okay, so I disagree a little bit because I think there were a few characters that I think he should have stuck to that I really did resonate with, and I think he did a great job developing them. So we can start kind of breaking it down like that, maybe, and then feel free to jump in, you guys, with people that you also resonated with. For me, I think a very obvious one was Opal Viola Victoria Bearshield. You get introduced to her as a child, and also
that's also that. Sorry, that
No,
just
go ahead.
intro to that is something I feel like is never really talked about, but the occupation of Alcatraz.
Right.
They do. I've toured Alcatraz one time, and they do like just mention it. But even in the tour, it's like a blimp, and there's
Wildly
like
understated. Yeah.
And I like honestly until it came up, I like forgot that
that was a thing.
was like a thing. So like
I never
another like
knew.
little,
It's
so
just
just
a
like a
lot
really
of
cool
whitewashing history.
introduction of that character to still highlight a historical event.
Yeah. And I really liked her character. I think we could have spent the whole book. I actually thought that was kind of going to happen because she was very well developed.
Interesting.
And then her sister Jackie Redfeather was also a pretty well developed character. She ends up being raped on Alcatraz and by Harvey, who is also a I think he's a character you could get behind. I know that sounds weird after we just said he's a rapist, but I feel like there was a good side and a bad side. Like, I don't want to, that's bad, but there was people you were rooting for in the story. And then there was people who were definitely you were not rooting for, and they were a product of their environment and of the atrocities that have been done to the native population. You didn't think that, Isaac?
That's why I feel like split it. Well, I think you from just the outset, but as soon as they talked about that character, you were like, okay, I can see how
I can sympathize with this.
Ended up here, and they're for sure. So like Harvey, I would have said he's a bad character. He's a rapist, absentee father of two different people. One he didn't know about, but whatever. And I feel like if you had developed him, you're like looking to try to get someone to sympathize with him. Where I was like, he's pivotal because he's a connection between kind of three different groups of people, because you have Edwin, who without Harvey is completely unconnected to the Red Feather kind of story.
Family.
And Blue coming in from another way, but they're connected to Red Feather because Jacqueline is the mom. And then you have the three boys and Opal. So Harvey is like kind of the connector of all that, but overall, maybe not the greatest guy. And he had a little bit of a turnaround. Yes, he leads Alcohol Anonymous and stuff, but still, like, I can sympathize more with Octavio than I can with Harvey.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, okay, so that could be the point of the book, for sure. It could be to develop sympathizable characters. It also could be to leave people ambiguous on whether or not a character is good.
Yeah.
But Isaac, you're speaking as if Harvey is bad, and Phoebe just said she sympathized with him. So
I'm not saying he's bad. I'm saying you can't say the good and the bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like we're missing the point here. Again, back to the privilege conversation. Like we are not we, but like the white populace.
We are bad. We're the bad ones. Yeah.
And it is, and I think
that's fair.
And Tommy Orange does a great, I think, to your point, Isaac, he is exposing that a little bit, right? Everybody, well, there's A, there's good and bad in everybody, and B, these people are just trying to also make ends meet. They're trying to get money from the powwow. The whole printing of gun thing, to me, though, doing an armed robbery is still a crime, and it's known that is bad, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to see where Tommy Orange, what his point was here, but I'm also, you know.
I think you nailed the point, Phoebe. I think that is like, these people are people of circumstance, and the cards that they were dealt, even if played poorly, does not say anything about how they would play a better hand.
Yeah.
It's hard to say I would do this in this situation from a vantage point that is so different than what they are feeling. And I think Isaac's right. Like, we can't judge these characters at all. We have no idea. the
Yeah,
circumstances
and
that
I
they're
think
sort of
that's not the
dealt.
point of the book, right? Ultimately, it's not the point of the book to judge, to be
Right.
judgmental or
Yeah.
judge these characters. I think the point of the book is exactly what we're describing. It's just exposure. It's trying to bring an understanding, and it's also it's trying to paint a picture, and I think it definitely does that. So I think we've talked about if we felt like the characters were connected enough. So maybe what a better thing to do would be run through our rating scale, Phil, and then we can kind of talk about our ratings because I think that's going to come up.
Yeah. So our rating scale is basically 3. It's based on the Michelin star scale, and a 3 is that like we would read this book again. So that's the highest rating. Then a 2 is we would recommend this to somebody else as a great book that they should read. And then a 1 is good, nothing special. I think in the next couple of books, there's going to be some books that I either 5-star and 5-star on Goodreads and give a 1 because I wouldn't recommend them, but I love them. Or the other way around, would recommend them, but I didn't really like them that
Yeah.
much. Or like we were forced to read again, and I think that that's what we might hit with this one.
Well, you could recommend it to
And got
a
a lot out
special
of it the
friend,
second time.
maybe like a certain friend.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, I think that that's just like when it's just a little bit different. Like it does usually align with how you think like stars, but that to keep those in mind when you
Yeah,
hear
it's a
our
little bit
ratings.
different than Goodreads, obviously. Yeah. So what do you think, Phil? Tell us.
So I gave it a 1. I didn't I wouldn't recommend this to somebody. I think that conceptually if I wanted to get this point across, I think that I could probably find maybe a long form New Yorker article about the contemporary American Indian experience, or I would have them read something historical. Maybe even there's probably a book about the occupation of Alcatraz. I just think that I didn't get enough out of emotion out of these characters. It did not do it for me.
Isaac, what did you think?
I gave it a 3. I really liked it. I did not have a problem with the um, number of characters. Like I said, I love the books or I love the stories that have the intertwining of characters throughout, without being like completely obvious. And that checked that box for me
Yeah.
in this one for sure. And then, we talked about it a lot, but the native voice is not one we hear. One that I think we should hear more of. And that I think is really cool. So
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. Great. A 3. Woohoo. You don't get those every day around here. No, I think for that same reason, I would say I was going to say a 1, and I'm actually going to say a 2 because I think I agree. You don't hear the native voice. We need to hear more of it. And so the only way to do that is to talk about it and recommend it to a friend. So I will say a 2. I think the only criticism I have is cut down the characters, and then we could have really engaged with a few of the really good characters that he had kind of teed up. So yeah, it's a 2 for me, and I think I'm very happy we read it. Very happy we got to talk about it.
What would you recommend if you liked
Yeah,
it,
so
Phoebe?
if you liked There, or you're trying to get something a bit like There by Tommy Orange, I recommend The Overstory by Richard Powers. This is not a short read, so it's a bit different in that end, but it is also an intertwining of characters, and it is about a tree and also just the overall idea of environmentalism being green. It's about saving trees, and it interconnects people and their stories around trees. And so it had the same tone to me, and I really enjoyed that book. It's a bit of an undertaking, but if you have not read The Overstory by Richard Powers, I do recommend that if you liked There. Yeah. Isaac, what about you? What do you recommend if people liked There?
So I recommended another one, just a little selfish plug for our own book club, The Casual Vacancy, from the standpoint of just the character intermingling. Just really cool. It obviously different vibe than The Casual Vacancy, but the idea of all these characters coexisting and kind of just passing each other, and at certain points interacting. Very similar. And then the second one I would recommend, and again, like why I like this book so much and we talked about it so much is this, from the contemporary native. The Earth is Weeping is just a historical one. It's about the Indian Wars of the late 1800s. Gives a lot of background of what kind of led to why the natives are in the positions that they are now with historical events, and highlights all the big names: Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Custer. But it's good.
Phil, what do you recommend?
Mine would be Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson. It's seen, I think, as a classic. I mean, I read it in school, so it's not like a contemporary book at all, but it's wild. There's actually, like, imagine if this was just in the powwow was not a thing, and that would be Winesburg, Ohio. Don't expect the characters to connect at all. It's just short stories, all from the same small town in Ohio. And there's passing, but there's no connection. There's no end. It just ends on another random short story. Like, there's nothing. I thought it was cool. I mean, that was the point of the book. It gave a lot of different perspectives. I think this could have been cool as that, to be honest. I think that this, instead of jumping around from 12 characters, just tell the whole 12 or tell the whole character and then go to a different perspective and just like don't feel the need to tie them together. I think that would have been a more meaningful way to do this book to me. But
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm in the severe minority here. This book is loved online and by critics. So he did something right for sure.
Yeah. What do we know? We're just
Right.
running our mouths out here.
Into the
Yeah,
abyss.
I was going to say like flapping our gabs, but I don't think that's right. Okay. No, Phil, thank you for that recommendation. I have not ever heard of that book, and I kind of agree with you. I think just a few different narratives, not connecting them would have been very poignant as well. I am currently finishing the Age of Assassin trilogy by R.J. Barker. This has been one that Phil has been recommending from the start. I think Isaac was trying to read that, but I returned it on Libby, so he is not reading that.
Yes, thanks for that.
So sorry. But I do feel bad for you because it is quite the treat. And if we have any fantasy lovers, if we have any fantasy lovers out there, really recommend that you read the Age of Assassins trilogy by R.J. Barker. It, to me, is a perfect mix of the Farseer trilogy and the Night Angel trilogy. The Farseer trilogy we've talked about many times in the podcast. It's by Robin Hobb, fantastic. And then the Night Angel series is by Brent Weeks, also a fantastic trilogy. I loved the Night Angel. I thought it was very good. And I think this is the perfect mix between that because I felt that there was a little bit lacking of development in the Night Angel that is really happening in Age of Assassins. And I think that there's more assassinating and fighting that didn't happen in the Farseer that is happening in Age of Assassins. And so to me, it's like a perfect marriage of those two. Highly recommend. Phil, thank you so much for the recommendation. Yeah, just really excited to finish it and see how it all ends. But that's what I'm reading currently. I'm on the third book, probably halfway through. So yeah. Isaac, what are you reading?
I am reading The Brothers Karamazov since Phebe returned the first book of Age of Assassins on me. And I will hold my thoughts till our next book club next week. So everyone tune in. I would recommend, if you want to have the book done, start it now. It's a long one.
Yeah. Good recommendation, Isaac.
Yeah, it is a long one.
What about you, Phil?
I've been reading the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy, which is good. I finished that by Django Wexler. It's good if you liked anything. The Powder War trilogy he also wrote. I think this one's better than that. And if you like anything by Daniel Abraham, who wrote the Dragon's Path, you would like this one. It's just a quality fantasy. So yeah. That's I would agree with Isaac's. The Brothers Karamazov is slow. So start early, and might be one to consider getting the book of if you want to take it seriously. Isaac's about to give you the rundown of it, but I think one thing that's not mentioned in this rundown is that, like, I'm 17 hours in and just got to the start of this rundown. It's the first 17 hours it's a philosophy. I like it. I think it's, if you like engage with the text, it's very philosophical and very interesting, but the plot does not start until 17 hours through.
Yeah.
So, food for thought.
I just want to point out Phil picked this book.
I did. I want to point out it's my wife's favorite book.
Oh,
so
then there you go.
If Phil gives it an inflated rating,
You know why.
she had to read it for a class. So it's one of those books where you could read it for a class.
Yippee.
So yeah.
It seems like it's one of those books so far.
Yeah, Isaac, tell us about it, would you?
Yeah, so like Phil said, I didn't know that this is what the book is about. And I'm 11
and
hours
he's
in.
12 hours through. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm holding all my opinions to the end. It could turn. Yeah, it could really turn. So everyone go in with a positive attitude. I know I am. Okay, so the complex plot involves the murder of their father, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov, in the subsequent trial of Dmitry, the eldest brother accused of the crime. The historical context of the brothers Karamazov is rooted in 19th century Russia, marked by social, political, and philosophical upheavals.
Buckle up, everybody.
Like
We're
I said,
doing it.
didn't know that.
Woof.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, again, it's all about the experience. It's all about talking with your siblings.
For sure.
And expanding your mind. Yeah. And with that all being said, this is your weekly reminder to call someone that you love, tell them about a good book. Hopefully it is There by Tommy Orange. And until we meet again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.